The H lookup, a little different, old school lookup function where instead of looking up rows, we're going to look through columns. Let me explain what's going on here. We have a series of blank cells along with data. Okay, they're just breakfast items. Hit F9 if you want to just see some randomness. We're going to look for, but here we have coffee, hash browns, and bacon. So show first menu item first. And that's by the row. But what happens if there's a blank here? Well, we can use the H lookup to try to find the first item, first menu item. Here's the anatomy. H lookup looks up the value in the first row and returns a value. How does it do it? Well, we're going to use the wildcard. Remember the wildcard? That's the asterisk. It needs to be in quotes. I may have said parentheses in the past, but you know what I meant. It's quotes. Where? Well, we're going to have a range. So keep in mind, we typically use columns, but here we're going to use a row. We're going to look for data C5 to E5. So we're going to go C5 to E5. A little bit different. We're not used to this. The H lookup will allow us to do that. And then pretty much the same thing as the VLOOKUP. We have the lookup array, we have the table array, we have row index, and then the range. Keep in mind, this row index, we need to identify where we're going. We're looking at row index, not column index. So we're looking at row 1. And then our range lookup is optional. We're going to put a 0 in there, which will be true. Let's look to see how this works. Over here on the right, you can see, here it is. Occasionally we run into a situation where we need to examine multiple columns and extract the first text value. This is possible with the H lookup and the wildcard. The lookup value is the wildcard. Why? Well, if there's nothing in a particular row, well, the H lookup will continue to look to find the first item. Blanks, to ignore empty strings generated by other formulas, try the following adjustments to wildcards. You can also put this question mark in there, and it will just provide a different outcome. Here we go. H lookup, wildcard, C510. So let's look. The lookup value will be what? Anything within a row. The table array, you can see it's highlighted, C5, E5. Row index, same thing. Here's the row. And then the range lookup, 0. The outcome will be coffee. Let's see. We can go here, F9. Nothing happens. Hit C5, the table array, F9, and it's going to go coffee hash brown 0. Row index is just going to show 1. Lookup's going to go coffee, hash browns, and it's going to find the first match. Now, what about here in this second feature? We have this blank cell. So what happens? We have a hash browns as the first menu item. That's correct. So let's look at the table array and see what happens. It shows 0, hash brown, and 0. What is H lookup doing? Look up a value in the first row and return a value. Well, 0 is not a value, but hash browns is. Okay, hit F9 just for practice. You could see I've set this up for these to be blanks. You're going to see eggs as the first item, pancakes, so on and so forth. That's H lookup. You can also use the X lookup, and it has the same features, but we'll dive into that in the future. Brad Williams, XL Prime.